iScrappers, Tom from the iScrap app. Today is Wednesday, January 22nd, 2020. We hope that everyone's been doing well. We hope that you're a Patreon supporter, where we've been updating some information and news through our Patreon app. We've also been quoting lots of people through rrcats.com, rrcats.com, with some high catalytic converter prices right now. We'd love the opportunity to earn your business there as well. But what we want to talk about today is some of the information, some of the news that we've heard and seen over the last week in the scrap metal world. We want to start with the copper prices and move to a couple of the non-ferrous items and go from there. One of the things that I wrote about in this week's report is we know that week to week a lot of the items that we talk about are relatively similar. Some of the news pieces change, some of the prices change, and a lot of people have asked us why we talk about these things opposed to having different topics week to week to week. We like having things where they become consistent. If we talk about copper one week, aluminum the next week, stainless the week after that, then brass, then insulated copper wire, then different nickel prices, and then Monel, and then carbide, we get too far removed from the base metals. I like to call the base metals for the non-ferrous side of things the ABCs: aluminum, brass, and copper. Of course, you can take each of those A, B, and C metals and break them down into dozens, if not hundreds of different categories, but we like to talk about them week to week because those are the things that most scrappers are dealing with on a day-to-day basis on the non-ferrous side of things. Now, if you look at the ABCs and you have that apostrophe S there, of course that stands for steel in our world, and that's the other reason we like to talk about those things during the week-to-week updates. So over the last week, we've seen copper prices drop about 7 or 8 cents a pound. Don't be shocked to see an immediate drop at your scrap yards. An adjustment of 1 or 2 cents on a daily basis won't really affect your day-to-day prices at your yard. But at 5 to 7 or 8 cents a pound, you will see some drops, and we saw those coming in through some of our reported prices in the last 2 days. One of the big reasons that we saw the price drop is because of the coronavirus that's coming out of China, with 9 people confirmed dead already, 1 case reported in the United States, hundreds others in China. And when those little viruses start to come about, if you think years and years ago when they had what was the one with the cows? Mad cow disease. When they had mad cow disease about 10 years ago, the stock market reacted because they don't know how quickly it's going to spread, how it's going to contaminate food, how it's going to contaminate the public. Is it going to travel from continent to continent, country to country? Is it going to make its way across on planes? All of these things you have to look at, and those are some of the things that happen that change a lot of the prices, even though they're not directly correlated. Because outside influences, whether it's oil pricing, having some type of political problems, unrest between countries, the tariff and the trade negotiations, all of these things add to the pot, and they really affect where a lot of the prices go. So while we watch these and we try to really hone in on them and get a better idea, what we look for week to week is where the consistencies and where the irregularities are happening. So that's the big thing that happened week to week that really affected the copper market. So we saw copper go down, brass, yellow, and red go down, insulated copper wire prices going down as well. Overall, the average bare bright price was around $2.16 per pound nationally, which is still in a really strong position, in our opinion, going into the first quarter of this year. Now, aluminum, relatively flat. Aluminum really has been the most boring and dreaded metal to talk about in the last year, as the tariffs put a real damper on it. And because of that, we haven't seen any real increases or signs of life from that. Nickel markets, which affects stainless, relatively tame. The one market that really has been the hot mover is that catalytic converter market, with rhodium nearing 10-year all-time highs, palladium really excelling, platinum striking over $1,000 an ounce. And if you go to rrcats.com, you'll be able to get some prices on your catalytic converters by sending your serial codes or pictures of your cats. Now we want to talk about one of the outside influences to the overall market, and that's the Phase 2 negotiations, which have begun to be started between the U.S. and the Chinese. Now, we heard President Trump talking yesterday at the World Economic Convention over in Switzerland about some of the different practices that are going on, and that the European countries are going to be starting to deal with the United States on new trade deals. It looks like we're trying to get a lot of trade deals between the U.S. and so many other countries or trade partners to be able to level the trading playing field. And watching these things unfold mean that we're going to have a little bit of unrest and unsettling prices in the markets for the foreseeable future. No one wants to see markets moving all over the place, but sometimes short-term problems do lead to long-term solutions, and that's been a firm belief of ours here at iScrap and at Rockaway Recycling over the years that we've been working on things. There's a lot of things that happen short term that really they affect the metals prices, copper dropping, aluminum dropping, and it's really hard sometimes to look outside of that tunnel vision and to open your hands and your eyes to see the forest through the trees. But what we're seeing with the metal prices long term will become a more sustainable market. Now, to switch over to that S part of the ABCs in the steel and iron markets, what we've seen over the last week is decline about $7 to $10 per ton. A weakening market after having such a strong month of December and a lot of material flowing in before and shortly after the holidays has led to some of the weakening prices. Oil prices are slightly down. We've also heard rumblings that we have another $10 to $20 drop coming the first week of February. So if you're working on any type of big job and you have some metal piling up, laying around, now is as good a time as any to cash out before we see a little bit of a weak market going into what seems to generally be the slower time of the year in North America, mostly due to the winter conditions in many parts and a little bit of slowing as some larger companies ramp up new production, are working on their equipment. We know multiple manufacturers, smelting operations, and larger processors that closed down partially during the month of January and February as they work on their equipment in some of the slower months when things tend to break a little easier. Think about it. If you're parking your car outside and it's 20 degrees, does it take an extra second or two to start up compared to the springtime or the summer where it's 60, 70, 80 degrees out? Of course it does. And because of that, the equipment that a lot of people are using, it gets cold, it can break, oil could become a little gelatinous, and that slows things down a little bit, whether you're working in the demolition field, the smelting field, or anything else that involves equipment. Guys, this is Tom from iScrap. Today is Wednesday, January 22nd, 2020. We look forward to seeing your pictures on our social media sites. We look forward to your emails coming through at info@iscrapapp.com. Please become a Patreon supporter so you can learn more about what's going on with the market. Tune in to rrcats.com so you can learn more quotes about your catalytic converters. And until next Wednesday, iScrappers, I'll scrap you later.